rules, lists of words, lists of phrases, complete the sentences. Audio files are way too easy. Let's talk about what books don't teach you about English fluency and also what you should be doing instead. Because let me tell you something, if English books made you fluent, if only they made you fluent, if books alone made you fluent, you'd already be in a better position. And here, this video is not intended, my intention is not to make you think that books are bad for you and that you shouldn't use books. No, on the contrary, I have books, I use them. But let's talk about some important facts, more specifically 3 facts that you need to understand about English fluency that books don't necessarily teach you. And if you don't know me very well, how's it hanging? I am Teacher Prix. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to learn how to go from stuck to speaking in 6 months and finally talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime in English. So I appreciate you being part of this community or even sharing this video with a friend. And I prepared some notes, okay? I was actually reading this. I was remembering rules, lists, word lists, phrases. These are typically what many popular English books teach. They have exercises to complete the sentences, write the sentences in a certain conjugation, then write it in the past, and write it in the present, complete with a missing verb or with a missing word. And while these exercises can be fun to some people, interesting to some people, they don't engage a very important part of your brain. And this is what I want to cover in today's lesson. So without further ado, let's cover the first fact, okay? They don't train your execution. You have actually a very poor execution. And fluency is about executing. It is about using. I will never grow tired of emphasizing that fluent people create. They execute. And books, they work the other way around. It already gives you the information, and I'm not against this part. It shows you the rules, the definition, what is this, what is that, when do you use this, when do you use that. But they activate your copy and repeat pattern. That's my fight, okay? If I don't do specific drills, specific exercises to make you go forward, to push you forward, you're going to stay in this pattern, in this loop of very poor execution, because the pattern of an English book is copying and repeating. And this is the problem. They don't talk about this. They have a good explanation part, but they have a very poor execution part. So think about this. Priscilla, the children do this. They listen and repeat. They copy adults. What are you saying? That doesn't work? In a way, for adults, it doesn't. Okay, it works for children, but in a different manner. Sometimes adults tend to compare children and themselves, adults and children and how they learn. It should be as easy as learning like a child, but you need to pay attention that children, they are focusing, they are observing their environment and what people around say and do. What they do after that is they execute. Immediately after receiving, or of course there's a process involved, it depends on the age of the child, but typically what comes next is execution. They activate their brain. They try to use and do what they see and hear. That doesn't happen when we're using a book. We have a repeat pattern. We have a copy and repeat pattern, but we don't understand the explanation behind, because we're not connecting with life, which is another important element in a child. Typically, when they see, observe, and execute, they are imitating and applying already to their lives, which is something that as adults we tend not to do. We fail to do sometimes because we lack proper guidance and instruction. So the way a child learns is very, very different. And when we have the book itself, we are eliminating lots of important factors that will contribute to our learning process. But my main point here is that books make you copy. They make you see a phrase that may not be describing something important to you, that may not be connected to something you care about, and there's not much effort. It is a lot of repetition. And don't get me wrong, I am in favor of repetition. I agree repetition can be good, can be healthy, but it's the process that needs to be repeated, not the exercise pattern. This is what we need to pay attention, okay? So your learning process as an adult changes slightly, it changes a little. So just the repetition will not cause the same effect as a child because we have our critical thinking more developed. We need more explanations. We need a little bit more structure to understand information around us. So we need a different approach. Just repeat this, and like a child, I like chocolate. You tell a child to repeat that, and over time they will begin to say, I like chocolate and I like banana and I like chocolate and banana together because they're so amazing. Children, because of the repetition process and the brain development, they will do this more quickly than us because they are at a different phase. As an adult, that's not gonna work. Okay, and looking at a book with phrases that are really disconnected from your adult life will only bring you down and make you feel like you're wasting your time learning something that is not going to help you. So books will slow you down if not used properly. And again, disclaimer, I'm not saying books per se are bad. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if you don't know how to use them, they can be a very powerful weapon against your fluency, okay? Because fluency is not knowledge. Fluency is speed. Is being able to react quickly, respond quickly. Your reaction time needs to be improved. And the book can be the enemy here if you don't use it accordingly, okay? So you need to prepare for more spontaneous conversations, for reactions, conversation fillers, hesitation control. What is hesitation? Here I am. I'm live right now. I may not be interacting with people watching, but I am live. I have some notes, okay, but I can take them away and I can speak and go with the flow and go accordingly. I don't have a problem doing that. Should anyone ask me a question point blank, what do you think of that? That is my hesitation, okay? So let's say you ask me about my last weekend. Very easy question, right? To some, that's very easy. To me as a teacher, that's basically a very simple question. But how much do you hesitate? How much time do you spend thinking, oh my goodness, what do I say? And I am not trying to explain that, oh, I don't remember what I did. No, that's not the hesitation. Hesitation is, I don't know what words to say. I don't know how to put the words together. That is hesitation, okay? So we need to learn how to control the hesitation, how to control the pauses or the excessive use of filler sounds. That books won't teach. Okay, books won't teach you how to reduce your filler sounds, how to reduce and lower your hesitation time. These are all activities that need to be approached differently. And if you spend way too much time, and when I say books, guys, I'm not just talking about grammar books. I'm talking about books with listening exercises. I'm talking about books with vocabulary practice, preparation courses, all kinds of books. They are good sources of information, explanation. However, to make you talk, to make you think fast, you need to learn how to use them. And that is something books don't teach. And I have been using many popular books for a really, really long time. And I have had more than 3,000 students in total if I consider my academy, my shorter courses. I think it's way more actually. I need to check this number. And when I ask students, okay, so when you're going back to English, what do you do? What do you study? They open grammar books, they open course books, vocabulary books. It is a very common practice. The problem is not the practice per se, but the actions. The book can be a source, but what you do with the source, that's what changes everything. And the same here with this video. What are you going to do after this video? That is what I'm inviting you to think about. What am I going to implement from this video? Because I will give you tips on what to do next, because you need to take actions after this video. And I will tell you what you need to do. Stay with me until the end. Recovery when you forget a word. There are strategies that we must practice when we don't know what to say, when we don't know a particular word, when we forget a word. I've done this a few times here already, but you don't know because it feels natural, because that's what fluency is. Fluency is speaking naturally, despite the fact I don't know some words, I don't remember some words, I recover very quickly. I recover so quickly that you don't pay attention. You're thinking, wow, she just changed the direction because she's fluent. She can do whatever she wants. When in reality, that is actually a skill, a paraphrasing skill that I teach my students in my academy, that I teach in my study plan. By the way, make sure to check out my study plan, especially if you study alone and need to know how to organize yourself to be more successful. But let's carry on, okay? As I was saying, in my program, in my academy, with my students, what I like doing is, of course, they have to watch a grammar lesson. Yes, you need that. Of course, they need to study words. Yes, you need that. But it's what you do after that counts, okay? And one motto I have with my students is always use what you learn. So you finish the grammar lesson, well, you have to use it, and you can't use it to describe the woman from New Zealand you don't know. You can't use what you learned to describe a movie you never watched. It has to be connected to things you lived, that you did or do. Otherwise, it's empty practice, okay? I don't know if you're following me on my Instagram, but I'm doing, and here on YouTube as well, I'm posting here too. I'm posting in a daily speaking challenge. Every day I teach something. They're shorter videos, of course. I teach something very easily, very quickly, excuse me, and then I answer a question. And the question, I find a way to connect it with my life. And in many cases, I pick what I taught, or an element of what I taught. I ask a question and then I talk about myself. That small practice will change the game for you. The next one is emotional regulation. Books don't teach you about emotional fluency. That's a very interesting concept that I came up with. Of course, I just coined the name emotional fluency, okay? But in a nutshell, emotional regulation means the art of managing your emotions when you're under pressure. Because in a book, you're doing mostly reading and writing. And very short writing, very, very little writing actually. And when your English speaking collapses, you don't know how to handle the pressure because you don't have the techniques to keep talking, to work on your body regulation, body awareness. You're not aware of what is happening, what is going on. Your breathing accelerates and you never practiced anything to help you slow down. This is something I teach my students. It's not connected to English anymore. I combine different tools to help my students develop a strong mindset for communication. Because what happens when you're in front of an audience, when you're in front of your colleagues in a board of directors, and you need to impress them, influence them with your English? You need to communicate something vital, something important. If you don't regulate your emotions, this is not going to happen. And you can buy many different course books. You can hire private teachers. You can do as everything you can possibly imagine, but emotional regulation is a must. Okay? It's as important as learning all those lessons, as buying all those books and studying, as going abroad and studying. That's equally important. And I have worked with the students who were extremely extremely knowledgeable, very intelligent, who knew a lot of English, but when under pressure, they panicked, they collapsed. And I had to work on their emotional regulation before working on these speaking techniques so that we could actually be able to get started with the communication lessons, okay? So before I share fact number 3 and what you should do, make sure to share this video with a friend. I would really appreciate if you could share this video with a friend and subscribe, because I don't know what's going on YouTube lately, but it's not sharing things very easily. It's not displaying my content very easily. So your support helps tremendously. And if you're interested, my study plan is available for purchase, okay? And I know it's going to be very useful. I don't bring too much information. I bring in the necessary information so that you learn how to study. Because let's face it, you can't be fluent if you don't study. But we can make this process more fun and more efficient. And that's what I teach in my study plan. But let's keep going. Link in the description of this video, by the way. Content dump. Books, they are usually very long and they have too much information. So they dump content, like the truck. You see the truck like dumping a lot of trash, a lot of content. Again, I'm not saying the content is trash, okay? I'm just exemplifying, I'm just showing you an image to make you understand. So they dump too much information in your brain, and as a result, many of you will feel overwhelmed, behind, like you're late, overstimulated, because there's just so much. There's so many phrasal verbs. There are so many expressions. There are so many idioms. So I should know more. You have that feeling that I should know more. I should have more expressions. I should have more vocabulary. What's going on that I don't know enough? Because of the books. They give you that idea that there's always more. Sometimes when students are about to purchase my academy, join my program, they think, but only these lessons? Aren't there more grammar lessons? More. And reality is that you don't need more. You need results. So books tend to make you feel that way. They don't tell you about that they're just dumping a lot of information. I have never, to be very honest, I have many grammar books, grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation. I'm a teacher after all. I have never finished any book. Never. I use them strategically when I see fit, when I feel like it's necessary for me to use them. But I have never finished them. Just to show you that just because you can doesn't mean you should. So what they don't tell you is that more information will not make you more advanced. It's just dumping information in your brain and make you more stressed, more stimulated, feeling like you're late when you're not. So be careful. Books will not make you fluent. Actions will. Those exercises will not make you fluent either, okay? Be careful. I'm not saying you shouldn't do them. It's just the mindset and the purpose. What is the purpose with those books? So based on that, what should you be doing? Okay, let's face those materials as they are. They are sources, okay? They are a source of information, not a source of practice. Oh, but Priscilla, I write the answers. I write the phrases. That is not a proper writing routine. It's just a grammar practice or a vocabulary complete exercise. Fluent people create. This is my most important message for you. All your results will depend entirely on the process you follow. Nowadays, people are much more result oriented. But the result you're seeking, the fluency, the confidence, will come from the process you follow. So right now, your English is a reflection of the process you're following or not. Because let's say you buy my academy, you purchase, or you purchase my study plan and you do nothing. Well, it's just another material, it's just another source. If you don't follow the instructions, if you don't follow the recommendations, nothing is going to change. So you see the grammar exercise. I will give you some examples, okay? You see the grammar lesson. If you just do the book exercise, that's not going to work. And I recommend not doing them. To be honest, I recommend creating. especially with so many resources we have available nowadays. So let's see here. I like this example. I will go back to the explanations, but let's say you're learning comparatives. Oh, but Priscilla, I already know comparatives. They're so easy. They're so easy, and yet so many people make mistakes. I like picking these really common examples of grammar lessons because the students get them wrong so much and so frequently. I always go back to comparatives or simple past, simple present, future, because they're so necessary and students fail, which is natural because of the way they study. Okay? Can you use a grammar book? Yes, you can. Pick the explanations because the explanation is important. It's like a teacher. I'm teaching you. Let's say I'm teaching you comparative. Just as I do with my students, I will give you the explanation that's necessary. Awesome, Teacher Prix. What's next? Then, what am I going to do? I need to do a writing practice and a speaking practice. I need to add pressure in my practice because if it's only comfortable replying, answering the exercises, checking the answers, that is too comfortable. So what would I do? This is one example. Okay, there are so many ways to do this. Why living in a house or apartment is better than living in an apartment or house? You name it. If you live in a house, then you make a different comparison. And in this exercise, I would write and I would speak, okay? Because I want to add pressure. And you can even time your practice because this is not something for you to do forever. Oh, I can spend all afternoon working on comparatives. No, time is life. I need to be very strategic with how much time I spend. So I would spend probably in writing, I would write this for about 10 to 15 minutes, picking as many possible ways to compare because I am working on comparatives. So if I just say, oh, living in an apartment is safer than living in a house. Why? Think about this. There are more cameras. There's more vigilance. I don't know. There's more surveillance. Excuse me. So I need to think of ways to use comparatives. That's the part that will challenge you. That's the part that will help you hesitate less. Because when you do this in practice, you prepare for real life. And this is a much more challenging exercise compared to completing the phrases in the book. That's easy. That's why you do them. And even in those scenarios, some students need more time to do them. Because those books, they complicate the exercises. But they are not the best ones for you because you're not creating. Fluent people create. To add the pressure, I would time, as I said, and I would time how much you spend when speaking. And when I say speak, I don't mean read. So if I were to compare living in a house, living in an apartment compared to living in a house, there are pros and cons. What are the advantages? Oh, okay, living in a house, living in an apartment is safer than living in a house. Because that, in my case, there's security, there's surveillance, there are cameras, and I feel like I am more protected than being alone in a house. So I would be doing this orally without looking at my notes, with a timer in front of me, 1-2 minutes. You're not supposed to speak forever. This is not a practice that you're going to do forever. This is a short practice to make you think fast. To teach your brain to think fast. Because you only teach your brain to think fast if you challenge your brain to use information faster. And this is something you're not doing. Which is why when there is an opportunity to talk, you don't. Because you're slow. Okay? And why recording your voice? Because after you do this practice, ideally, you should listen. And pay attention to pauses, hesitations, mannerisms. I correct my students in my academy. But as you are alone, you need to listen. Pay attention to your pronunciation. Pay attention to the comparatives. Did you use them? Pay attention to the explanations you read in the book. So writing and speaking drills, that is one of the best ways to use what you study. Writing and speaking. But the writing cannot simply be random, disconnected examples. They must be connected. And let go of of the concept of finishing the book exercise. You don't need that. You need to challenge your critical thinking. So if you go to your mind right now, which one do you think is better, living in a house or living in an apartment? How many comparative phrases can you write, can you speak, comparing a house and an apartment? That is going to help you think faster. That's what you should be doing instead. And that way, you're going to be learning how to use what you study, because fluent people create. Share this video with a friend, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.